The morning began like many others for the single father and his young daughter. They walked side by side down a quiet street, where shops were still closed and the air felt cool and calm. The father carried a small bag with breakfast inside, while the daughter held his hand and stepped carefully over cracks in the ground. This walk was part of their routine, a small moment they shared before the day became busy, though. Father enjoyed these walks because they gave him time to listen and to think, though. Daughter enjoyed them because she liked being close to him and seeing the world wake up. They moved forward. The street slowly came alive. Bus passed by in the distance, and a shop owner lifted a metal door. The daughter looked around with wide eyes, noticing every small detail. She pointed at birds near the sidewalk and smiled when one hopped closer. Father watched her quietly, feeling thankful for this peaceful moment. He knew life was not always easy, but moments like this helped him. Keep going. A few steps later, the daughter slowed down. Her grip on his hand became tighter. She was looking ahead at something near the wall of a closed store. The father followed her gaze and saw a shape on the ground. At first, it looked like a pile of blankets, but as they came closer, he realized it was a woman lying down. A small baby was held close to her chest, wrapped tightly in thin cloth. Daughter stopped walking. She stared at the woman and the baby with a serious look. Her voice was soft. When she spoke, she asked why the baby was sleeping outside. The father did not answer right away. He felt something heavy settle in his chest. He had seen people sleeping outside before, but seeing a baby there felt different. It felt wrong and painful. Woman was lying on her side, trying to block the wind. Her face looked tired and pale. Dark circles rested under her eyes. Baby was very still except for small movements showing quiet breathing. The cloth around the baby looked worn and not very warm then. Father noticed the woman had one arm wrapped tightly around the baby, as if afraid to let go. The daughter took a small step closer without realizing it. Father gently pulled her back. He did not want to scare the woman or put his daughter at risk. Daughter looked up at him with concern on her face. She asked if the baby was cold. Her voice carried worry, not fear. Father felt memories rise inside him. He remembered nights when money was short and fear was long. He remembered holding his own child, while wondering how to make tomorrow better. Those memories never fully left him. Seeing the woman brought them back in full force. He understood more than he wanted to. The street around them continued as normal people walked past without stopping. Some glanced quickly and looked away. Others did not look at all. The father noticed this and felt uneasy. Wondered how long the woman and baby had been there. He wondered how many people had walked by already. The daughter tugged at his hand again. She whispered that the baby looked very small. She asked if the baby had eaten. The father knelt down so he could speak at her level. He told her that sometimes people have hard days and need help. He said they should be kind and careful. The daughter nodded slowly. Trying to understand, the father stood up again and looked at the woman. He thought about continuing the walk and being on time for work. He thought about responsibilities waiting for him, but his feet did not move. Something inside him would not allow him to walk away. He knew that ignoring this moment would stay with him forever. The woman stirred slightly. Her eyes opened for a brief moment. She looked up and saw the father and daughter standing nearby. Fear flashed across her face. She pulled the baby closer and tried to sit up. The father quickly raised his hands in a calm gesture. He spoke softly, telling her he did not mean harm. Woman relaxed just a little but remained cautious. Her voice was weak when she spoke. She apologized for being there. She said she would move soon. The father told her there was no need to apologize. He said he just wanted to make sure she and the baby were okay. The daughter watched quietly, holding her father's hand. She looked at the baby with gentle curiosity. She did not speak, but her eyes said everything. The father felt her silent plea. He felt the weight of being a role model in that moment. The woman explained slowly that she had nowhere else to go that night. She said the baby had been crying earlier, but finally fell asleep. She had been awake most of the night, watching and listening. Her words were calm, but carried deep exhaustion. Father listened carefully. He did not interrupt. He noticed the way the woman kept checking the baby, even while speaking. Her love was clear despite her situation. The daughter leaned closer, resting her head against her father's arm. The father took a deep breath. He knew this moment was important, not just for the woman and baby, but for his daughter as well. This was a chance to show what kindness looked like in real life, not in stories or lessons, but in action. He asked the woman if she had eaten. She shook her head slowly. He reached into his bag and pulled out some food. He offered it gently, without stepping to close. The woman hesitated, then nodded with gratitude in her eyes. The daughter smiled softly. She seemed relieved, as if something inside her settled. The father felt the same way. He knew this was only the beginning. He did not yet know how far this path would go, but he knew he could not turn away now. The street felt different after that moment, quieter, and heavier. Time seemed to slow down. The father understood that one small walk had turned into something much bigger, and this was only the first step. The father stood there longer than he planned. The morning light grew brighter, and the streets slowly filled with more people. Cars passed and footsteps echoed, but the small space around them felt quiet. Woman ate slowly, trying not to wake the baby. Her hands shook a little from tiredness. The father watched carefully, staying respectful and calm. The daughter stayed close to him. She did not ask many questions now. She seemed to understand that this moment needed silence. Every few seconds her eyes moved back to the baby. She looked worried in a way that felt older than her years. The father noticed this and felt a deep pull in his chest. After a while the woman finished eating. She thanked the father in a soft voice. Her eyes were wet, but she tried to smile. Father nodded and told her she did not need to explain anything. He said, "Everyone needs help sometimes." Woman looked down and held the baby closer. The father asked gently how long she had been outside. The woman paused before answering. She said it had been many days. She said nights were the hardest. She had learned to stay awake as much as possible. The baby depended on her for everything. Daughter shifted her weight and whispered to her father. She asked if the baby had a bed. The father felt the question cut deep. He did not answer right away. He looked at the woman instead. The woman shook her head slowly. Father thought about his own home. It was small but warm there. It was a place to sleep and clean water. There was safety. He realized how easy it was to forget these things mattered so much. He felt a mix of guilt and gratitude. People continued to walk by. Some looked curious, some looked uncomfortable. A few slowed down but kept moving. The father noticed how quickly people chose not to see. He wondered how often he had done the same before. The daughter sat down on the sidewalk near her father. She did not go close to the woman. She simply sat and waited, though. Father saw this as a sign she was not in a rush anymore. Neither was he. The woman spoke again. She said she never thought this would happen to her. She once had a job in a small room. She said things fell apart. Slowly one problem turned into many. By the time she realized how bad it was too late. The father listened without judging. He knew how fast life could change. One missed paycheck, one bad decision, one moment of bad luck. He understood that anyone could end up here. The daughter leaned against him. She asked if the woman was scared. The father repeated the question gently. The woman nodded. She said fear followed her everywhere, but she tried to be strong for the baby. The baby stirred slightly and made a soft sound. The woman smiled instantly. Her face changed when she looked at the child. The exhaustion faded for a moment. The father saw pure love in that look. It reminded him of when his daughter was small. Father asked if the woman had anyone she could call. She said there was no one left. Family ties were broken long ago. Friends drifted away when things became difficult. Now it was just her and the baby. The father felt the weight of responsibility grow. He did not want to promise anything he could not keep, but he also did not want to leave them there. His thoughts raced quietly. He looked at his daughter. The daughter looked back at him. Her eyes were steady and clear. She did not beg or cry. He simply waited. In that look he saw trust. He knew she believed he would do the right thing. The father stood up slowly. He told the woman he needed to make a few calls. He said he would come back. The woman looked uncertain. She had heard promises before there. Father sensed this and spoke firmly but kindly. He told her he was a single parent. He told her he understood fear. He said he would not forget her there. Woman nodded quietly. The father took his daughter a few steps away. He made a call to someone he trusted. He explained the situation simply. He did not exaggerate or ask for praise. He just asked for guidance. While he spoke, the daughter stood beside him. She watched the woman from a distance. She hugged herself against the cold air. The father noticed and placed his jacket around her shoulders. After the call ended, the father felt a small sense of direction there. were places that could help. There were people who knew what to do. It would take effort and patience, but it was possible. He returned to the woman and told her there were options. He said it might not be easy or fast, but help existed. The woman listened. Carefully, hope flickered in her eyes. The daughter smiled faintly. She asked if the baby would be warm today. The father said he would do his best. Woman reached out and gently touched the daughter's hand. She thanked her for caring. The street felt different. Again, less distant, more connected. Father realized that his day had already changed. He was no longer just going to work. He was stepping into something bigger. He looked down at his daughter. He knew she would remember this moment, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. This was how values were taught, through action, not words. The woman adjusted the cloth around the baby. She looked up at the sky. The sun was higher now. The day was moving forward. For the first time in a while, she felt less alone. The father took a deep breath. This was not the end of the struggle. It was only the next step. But it was a step taken together and that made all the difference. The father watched the woman closely. He noticed how careful she was with every small movement. The baby stirred in her arms and she adjusted the blanket gently. He realized she had learned to be protective and quiet at the same time. The little girl clutched his hand and looked up at him. Her eyes showed patience and quiet understanding. The father knew the next step mattered. He could not rush this or make it seem sudden. He knelt down near the woman and spoke softly. He asked about her situation. She hesitated for a moment, then began to explain. She told him how the job she once had disappeared unexpectedly. Bills piled up and help from friends and family slowly disappeared. The apartment was lost, and with it the feeling of security. Every day became a challenge. She had to find food, shelter, and safety for the baby. Some days she walked the streets from morning to night. The other days she found a corner to rest. It was exhausting. The father listened quietly, did not interrupt or judge. He thought about the times he had struggled alone. He knew how heavy fear could feel. The little girl remained close. She was quiet but attentive. She wanted to understand without causing more pain. The woman paused for a moment to adjust the baby. The baby made a soft noise and opened eyes slowly. Though mother smiled briefly. Despite her exhaustion, she whispered something to the child and rocked gently. Though father saw the bond and felt it deeply. It reminded him of his own life with his daughter. The little girl asked softly if the baby had a warm place to sleep. The father explained gently that sometimes people have no choice. The little girl nodded as if she understood more than her years. Her questions were simple but meaningful. The father asked if the woman had anyone to trust. Shook her head slowly. She said she felt alone most of the time. She relied on kindness from strangers when necessary. The father felt a sense of urgency. He realized help had to come quickly to prevent danger. He stood up slowly. He asked if she could move for a moment. She nodded cautiously. He offered his hand in a gesture of reassurance. She took it and followed him a few steps to a slightly safer spot. The baby remained secure in her arms. The father spoke softly. He told her that help existed. Said he knew a place where she could rest for the night. He warned it might take patience and courage. The woman listened carefully. Did not smile, but her eyes flickered with hope. Little girl remained quiet but curious. She watched the woman and baby carefully. She sensed the fragility of the moment. The father felt proud of her for observing without fear. The father explained to the woman that he would stay nearby until arrangements were made. He wanted to make sure the baby and mother were safe. She nodded in silent agreement. Her voice was low and calm. He contacted someone who worked with families in need. He spoke plainly and clearly. He described the situation and asked what steps could be taken immediately. The little girl held his hand quietly as he spoke. She did not interrupt but waited patiently. The woman adjusted the baby and spoke softly. She shared memories of when life was easier. She did not dwell, but allowed a small glimpse of normalcy. The father listened. He understood that remembering better times could bring comfort. Though little girl leaned closer and whispered a question. She asked if the baby would smile. Again, soon the father looked at her and explained gently that care and love could help. The mother looked at the little girl and nodded slowly. Small connection formed between them. The father felt the weight of responsibility grow heavier. He had to Act carefully, but firmly. The woman needed real help, not just temporary attention. The little girl sensed this too. Her hand tightened slightly around his. Father spoke quietly to the woman. He told her that the next step would involve a safe place. For the night, he asked if she could trust him. She nodded slowly. It's not easy to trust strangers when life had been hard, but she felt something honest in him. They waited together on the street. Father watched cars pass and people move about there. Routines. He realized how invisible some struggles were. Many people walked past without noticing. Yet here in this small space, life felt urgent and precious. The woman shared more about her days. She said she often went without proper food. She shared how she tried to comfort the baby. Even when exhausted, her love was constant. The father felt admiration for her strength. The little girl asked quietly if she could hold the baby for a moment. The father considered it and nodded. The woman lifted the baby slowly and handed the child carefully. The little girl held the baby gently. She whispered soft sounds to make the baby calm. Father watched silently. After a few moments, the mother took the baby back. Her face showed gratitude. She spoke quietly to the little girl and thanked her for caring. The father felt a warm sense of humanity. The smallest acts of kindness carried meaning. The father checked his phone. He had received instructions for where the woman and baby could go safely. Was not a permanent solution, but a start. He shared this with the woman. Her eyes brightened. A little hope was returning slowly, though. The little girl observed the scene carefully. She leaned against her father. She understood that life could be difficult and unfair, but she also understood that people could step in and help. The father felt proud of her awareness. The mother adjusted the baby again. She wrapped the blanket tighter and spoke softly to the child. Her exhaustion was still visible, but her body seemed lighter. Father realized that having a plan, even a small one, could bring relief. The father and the woman discussed how they would move carefully. The little girl stayed close and watched silently. She understood the importance of patience and respect. The father gave gentle instructions and reassured the mother. People continued to move past them on the street. Most did not notice what was happening, but the father felt that attention to the small moments mattered more than public recognition. This was about real help, not appearances. The mother expressed gratitude in quiet. Washi did not ask for anything more. Her relief was visible, but restrained. The father knew this was only the beginning. The next steps would take time and care. The little girl reached up and held her father's hand. She looked at the mother and baby and whispered softly. Her innocence and empathy filled the moment. The father felt a sense of purpose. They stayed together on the sidewalk until arrangements were ready. The father spoke softly to calm the mother and baby. The little girl watched and learned. This was the kind of real-life lesson that could not be taught in books. The morning turned brighter. The father and daughter shared small smiles with the mother. They waited patiently. This quiet time built trust and understanding. It laid the foundation for action that would follow. The father took a deep breath. He knew this was only part of the journey, but it was a critical part. He felt ready to guide the mother and baby to safety. Little girl felt calm and connected. The mother felt seen and cared for. Baby remained secure and comforted. This moment, the street and the world felt less lonely. Human connection had made a difference. It was not dramatic, but it was real and meaningful. Father knew that one small step could lead to larger changes for all of them. The father knew it was time to act. He could feel the urgency in the air. Looked at the woman and the baby, and then at his daughter. He needed to show both of them that help was real and immediate. The little girl held his hand tightly. She sensed something important was about to happen. Spoke softly to the woman. He told her he had arranged a temporary place where she and the baby could rest. He explained it would not be permanent, but it was safe and warm. The woman listened. Cautiously, her eyes showed relief mixed with uncertainty. Had learned not to trust too quickly. The father asked the little girl to stay close. She nodded quietly. Her small hand in his gave him strength. He knew she was watching and learning about kindness, courage, and empathy. They moved slowly through the street. Father kept his voice calm and gentle. The woman held the baby close and followed his pace. She glanced around to make sure no one was too close. Her life had taught her caution. The little girl walked beside them. She looked at the woman and baby and then back at her father. She asked softly if they would really be safe. Father nodded, reassuringly. he did not promise to. Much he only said he would do his best. They reached a small building, where the father had arranged help. He spoke with someone who worked there quietly. He explained the situation again. The woman listened and nodded. She seemed relieved, but still careful. Father guided her gently inside. The little girl stayed close behind the baby, remained calm in the mother's arms. The staff welcomed them quietly. They had prepared a small room with blankets, food, and a warm place to sleep. The woman looked around slowly. She whispered a quiet thank you. Father smiled softly. Did not want to overwhelm her with words. His presence alone was enough for now. The little girl asked if she could help. The father encouraged her to hand over a small bag of supplies he had brought. She carefully placed the items on a table. The mother watched and smiled. Faintly, it was a small gesture, but it carried meaning. The father asked the woman to sit while he made sure everything was ready. He checked the blankets, the baby's comfort, and the food. He explained to the little girl how sometimes people need simple things to feel safe. The little girl listened intently. After a few moments, the mother set the baby down on the blanket. She sat beside the child and held hands. The father watched quietly. They knew it was important to let them settle and feel secure. The little girl knelt nearby and observed. She asked if the baby was hungry. The father nodded. He suggested they start with a small bottle. The mother agreed and fed the baby slowly. The father noticed how careful and loving she washed her. Every movement showed attention and care. The little girl watched and learned. She asked questions softly but respectfully. The father answered with simple words. After the baby was fed, the mother adjusted the blanket. She made sure the child was warm and comfortable. The little girl helped by bringing a small extra blanket. The mother accepted it gratefully. The father spoke to the staff quietly. He explained the next steps. He wanted the mother and baby to stay safe, at least until proper arrangements could be made. Staff listened and nodded. They appreciated the careful planning. Little girl asked if the mother and baby would have a place to stay after tonight. The father explained that other resources could help. But it might take time, he said. Patience and trust were important. The little girl seemed to understand. The mother spoke softly to the father. She expressed gratitude for the help and for the kindness shown. Her voice was calm and respectful. She explained that she had never expected someone to take action so quickly. The father nodded silently. He understood that the smallest gestures could make the biggest difference. The little girl asked if the baby would sleep peacefully. Now the father said he hoped so. The mother smiled faintly and adjusted the baby again. The child closed eyes and seemed calmer. The father stepped outside for a moment. He looked back and saw the mother holding the baby close. The little girl stayed beside him. They shared a quiet smile. It was a moment of satisfaction, not pride, but relief. They had helped change a life for a moment. The father felt a sense of responsibility. He knew the journey was not over, but he also knew that taking action had made a real difference. Little girl held his hand. Her presence reminded him that lessons were being learned through this experience. He returned inside to check once more. The mother and baby were settling down. The staff helped quietly, without disturbing them. Father explained to the little girl the importance of respect and patience. The little girl nodded. They spent some more time ensuring everything was comfortable. The father checked the room temperature, the blankets, and the lighting. The baby stirred slightly, but remained calm. The mother watched carefully. The little girl asked if she could say goodnight. The father encouraged her. She leaned over softly and whispered comforting words to the baby. The mother smiled faintly and nodded. The father felt a quiet pride after. While the mother spoke to the father, she said she felt safe. She said she would rest and care for the baby. The father assured her that she could reach out for more help if needed. The little girl sat quietly nearby. The father and daughter prepared to leave. He spoke softly to the mother. He reminded her to be careful and take one step at a time. The mother nodded. She held the baby close and smiled faintly. The father and daughter stepped outside. The sun was higher. Now the street felt brighter and quieter. The father took a deep breath. He felt a sense of accomplishment. It was not dramatic, but it was real. They had made a difference. The little girl looked up at him and smiled faintly. She had learned something important about kindness, action, and empathy. Father squeezed her hand gently. He felt grateful that he could show her how one small act could change lives. They walked slowly back home. The father reflected on the events. He knew the mother and baby still faced challenges, but he also knew that today they had found safety and care. The little girl walked quietly beside him. The father understood that real help required effort, patience, and courage. He knew the lesson for his daughter was clear. Seeing problems was not enough, action mattered more than words. The little girl occasionally looked back at the building. She understood that the mother and baby were safe for now. She felt a sense of calm, knowing that people could step in to help. The father felt proud and relieved. They continued their walk. The father felt a quiet sense of purpose. He knew this moment would stay with him. The little girl held his hand tightly. The world felt less heavy because of small acts of human kindness. They reached home and paused for a moment. Father reflected on how one unexpected moment on a street could change lives. The little girl looked at him with understanding. They both knew that taking action had made the difference. The mother and baby were no longer alone, and that was enough for today. Father and daughter walked home slowly. The morning sun warmed the streets. As they moved, the little girl held his hand quietly. She thought about the mother and baby. They had just helped. Her mind replayed the images of the baby sleeping safely and the mother looking relieved. Father felt a calm in his chest. He thought about how one small action had already made a difference. He knew the mother and baby still faced challenges, but for now they had safety, warmth, and care. The little girl spoke softly. She asked if the mother and baby would be okay. The father nodded. He said people would continue to help, and that the mother had taken the first step toward safety. The little girl seemed satisfied with that answer. As they walked, he told her that kindness was more than giving things. It was taking action when someone needed help. He explained that noticing small details like hunger or cold could change a life. The little girl listened carefully. Her eyes showed understanding. The father thought about the street and how many people walked by. Without noticing, he realized that even small attention mattered. He explained that empathy meant seeing and caring even when it was not convenient. The little girl nodded quietly. They passed other streets and corners where people hurried by. The father thought about all the unseen struggles. He said it was important to take small steps whenever possible. The little girl squeezed his hand. She felt proud that they had helped at home. He sat with her and talked gently about the day. He explained that courage was not always loud. Sometimes it was quiet and patient. He reminded her that respect for others and understanding their needs was the most important. The little girl asked if the baby would smile soon. The father smiled softly, said that with care and love, the baby would grow strong and happy. The little girl imagined the baby sleeping peacefully in a warm room. She felt relief and joy for that small life. The father thought about the mother too. He hoped she could rest and find more support. He knew that recovery took time, but this first step mattered. The little girl asked if she could pray silently for them. The father encouraged her. They shared a quiet moment of thought and hope. He reflected on how life could change. Suddenly one day someone had a home and warmth. The next day they could find themselves outside with no safety. He explained to his daughter that noticing and acting was a way to help prevent despair. Little girl listened and understood that real life was sometimes hard, but she also understood that people could step in and make a difference. She asked if they would ever see the mother and baby again. The father said that sometimes help was quiet and private. They might not meet again, but their actions had meaning and effect. The father told her that kindness often worked in steps. One small action led to another. The little girl thought about how holding the baby gently and showing care made a difference. She realized that even children could contribute in small ways. As the day went on, the father and daughter shared a calm meal. He reminded her that noticing others was a habit to practice every day. He told her that small acts could prevent great suffering. The little girl nodded as she understood the lesson. He thought about how much he had learned to. Of an adult sometimes forgot to see what was in front of them. This day reminded him that awareness and patience were powerful tools. He felt grateful that his daughter had guided him through noticing tooth. They spoke quietly about the mother and baby. The father reminded his daughter that life had challenges for everyone, but acting with empathy could change the course of some stories. The little girl listened with intent and reflected on what she could do in the future. Later, he took the daughter to a nearby park. They walked slowly. and noticed other people he encouraged her to observe and think about. Who might need help, she watched quietly and considered the small ways she could assist. The father realized that teaching empathy through real action was far more valuable than just words. The little girl learned by seeing and participating. She understood that noticing suffering and responding appropriately was a form of courage. They returned home as the afternoon sun began to lower. The father reminded his daughter that their world was full of challenges, but each small act of kindness added hope. The little girl felt pride for having been part of that hope. They spent the evening reflecting on the day. The father told her that helping others often started with noticing. Then little girl remembered how she had seen the baby first and asked questions. Her observations had begun the chain of help. The father explained that life sometimes required stepping forward when it was difficult. He said that not everyone could do everything, but everyone could do something. Little girl nodded quietly as she understood the lesson. They discussed the importance of caring for strangers with respect. The father reminded her that empathy was seeing people as human beings, not just problems. The little girl thought about the mother and the way she held her baby. She realized that love could be powerful. Even in the hardest situations, the father and daughter made a small plan for the days ahead. He explained that they could continue to notice and help people in their community safely. Little girl felt excited about contributing in her small way. The father reflected on the street where it all began. He realized that paying attention mattered more than rushing or avoiding. He knew that his actions had started a chain reaction of car. The little girl agreed silently. She felt the importance of observing and acting. Before bedtime, they shared a quiet conversation. The father reminded her that small acts of courage and empathy could change lives. Little girl thought about the mother and baby and felt hope. She understood that even without fame or recognition, they had made a difference. The father watched her sleep later that night. He felt proud and calm, knew that this day had taught both of them something valuable. Could be difficult, but noticing and helping was always possible, he thought about the mother and baby and hoped they were sleeping safely. He hoped that the little steps they had taken would grow into greater support. The little girl slept peacefully, knowing she had made a small difference. The father reflected that life was built on these moments. Small actions connected to empathy and kindness could change the world one step at a time. Here felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He knew this lesson would stay with both of them forever. The day ended with quiet peace. The little girl learned that noticing others and acting gently could be powerful. Father learned that showing kindness in action was as important as teaching. At the mother and baby had found safety for no end. The world had become a little warmer because of their care. The next morning, the father and daughter woke early. They prepared a small breakfast and sat quietly. Daughter asked if the mother and baby were still safe. The father nodded and explained that they had stayed at the safe place through the night. He said people were helping them with food and warmth. The little girl listened carefully. She asked if the mother would be able to rest more. The father said yes, and that some small support could grow into larger help over time. The daughter seemed relieved and thoughtful. After breakfast, they decided to take a walk. The street felt calm and fresh from the morning air. The father reminded the little girl to notice everything around them. Small details could reveal who might need help. As they walked, the little girl pointed at people sleeping on benches. She asked if they were safe. The father explained that not everyone had shelter. He said that sometimes noticing and acting gently could change lives. The little girl nodded. She understood the connection between seeing and helping. They passed a corner where an elderly man struggled with a bag. The father suggested they offer help. The little girl picked up a small bag they carried and walked beside him. The man looked surprised but grateful. The father helped carry the rest of the bag while the little girl handed him water. The father noticed how proud the little girl seemed. He explained that even small help mattered. The man smiled and thanked them quietly. The little girl realized that noticing problems and taking action could make people feel seen. They continued walking through the neighborhood. The little girl asked questions about why some people had so little. The father answered honestly in simple words. He said life sometimes was unfair, and that not everyone had the same chances. He told her that noticing and helping created hope. They reached a small park where children played. The little girl ran ahead but always looked back to make sure her father followed. The father watched her and reflected on how much she had grown in understanding kindness. A woman on a bench tried to quiet a baby crying softly. The father and daughter approached carefully. The father asked if they could help. The Woman explained she was tired and had no help for a while. The father offered food and clean blankets. The little girl handed a small toy from their bag to comfort the baby. Mother looked relieved. The father spoke gently to the woman. He told her there were resources nearby for mothers with small children. He explained that someone could guide her safely. She wished the woman listened quietly. She seemed uncertain, but hopeful. The little girl watched as the mother held the baby close. She whispered softly and smiled. The father explained that even a small gesture of kindness could change a moment. The little girl understood and felt proud. After a while, they continued walking. Father noticed more people struggling quietly along the streets. Some were hungry, some were alone, he explained to the daughter that noticing these details was the first step toward helping. The daughter asked if they could do more for the mother and baby they had helped yesterday. The father said yes. He explained that support could continue with food, clothing, or visits. The little girl nodded enthusiastically. She wanted to be part of that kindness. They passed a small shop where a man sold bread and fruit. The father suggested they buy a few extra items to give to people they met. The daughter helped choose small pieces and carried them carefully. They smiled at the shopkeeper, who nodded in understanding. The way back, they gave bread and fruit to a man sitting quietly. He thanked them softly. The father explained that noticing hunger and acting was important. Little girl felt good about their small act. The father and daughter stopped at a quiet street corner. Little girl looked at the buildings and the people. Asked why some homes were empty and some people had no place to go. The father answered that life could be unpredictable. He said showing kindness could make the world feel safer and warmer for those in need. Reached the street where the mother and baby had slept the day before. The father explained that they had found a safe place and were receiving care. The little girl asked if they would be able to rest properly. Now the father said yes. He reminded her that each day brought a chance to help again. The little girl seemed to understand that helping was not a single act, but a continuing effort. She held her father's hand and asked if they could continue noticing people. The father smiled and nodded. They walked slowly home. The father explained how observing and acting respectfully built trust. The daughter listened quietly, reflected on the small ways she had helped so far at home. The father spoke about patience and persistence, told his daughter that even if change was slow, it mattered. He said that hope could grow from small acts of empathy and attention. The daughter thought about the mother and baby. She imagined them sleeping safely and beginning a new day. She felt happy that their actions yesterday had made a difference. Father reminded her that life could be difficult for many people, but noticing struggles and acting kindly could create a ripple effect. The little girl nodded and understood that kindness was powerful. They prepared a small lunch together. The father explained that sharing food could be a way to show care. The little girl arranged small pieces in bags for people they might meet. They decided to carry the bags quietly and hand them gently. After lunch, they walked again. They gave food to an elderly woman and a man who seemed cold. The father explained that respect and careful attention mattered as much as the food. The little girl nodded silently. The day continued with small acts of observation and kindness. Father and daughter noticed people needing help and responded gently. They did not seek attention, but focused on quiet action. The little girl learned that small contributions were meaningful. By evening, they returned home. The father reflected on the day. He told his daughter that noticing and acting could continue every day in small ways. The little girl listened and felt pride. In their efforts, they spoke quietly about the mother and baby. The father explained that safety and care were ongoing processes. He reminded his daughter that showing kindness in daily life built compassion and understanding. The little girl thought about all the people they had noticed and helped. She felt grateful that they could make a difference. Father smiled and explained that every small act counted. As night came, they prepared for sleep. The father reflected on how noticing and taking action could change lives. The little girl understood that observing carefully and responding respectfully was a form of courage. Before sleep, the little girl whispered that she hoped the mother and baby were resting well. The father assured her that they were safe and cared for. The little girl felt calm and happy, though. Father realized that the lesson of empathy, action, and observation would stay with both of them forever. He knew that their actions could continue quietly each day. Little girl understood that kindness was a habit to practice constantly. The night ended with quiet reflection. The father and daughter felt that observing and helping created warmth and hope. Mother and baby had found safety and comfort in the world had become a little better through their small acts of care.